Good afternoon, or good morning, sorry. It's Saturday morning, UK Property Talk. This is Charles Kelly here today to talk to you about all matters property in the UK and perhaps abroad as well, but mostly here in the UK. Well, in the UK, I think it's clear that most agents now are saying that the market has probably topped out. We've had a massive boom in the last couple of years, but they're all saying things are slowing down. My lawyer's saying the same thing, that things have definitely slowed down. He was snowed under for the last couple of years, but now things seem to have quietened down. But it's at a time when things should be getting busier because it's summer. I mean, the sun's shining through my window right now, and this is the weather for people getting out there and looking at properties, you know, spring and summer. So it should be getting busier. But as we know, there's things going on in the economy that are not looking good for us. You know, we've got almost sort of double-digit inflation around the world now, and prices of everything are soaring. In fact, just slightly off property, yesterday, or I think Thursday, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, in the UK, had to announce a series of packages, a £5 billion package to help people who are in need and struggling with their energy bills. Electricity and gas is the most types of energy we have in the UK, and he's going to give out £400 for everyone off their bills this year, £650 to people on the lowest pay scale. So they're really throwing a lot of money at this, and they're doing this through a windfall tax, which means that oil and gas companies are going to pay an extra amount of tax this year to fund it. So it's almost like going back to a socialist government where you say, you've made too much money this year, so we're going to give you an extra tax, give it to the poor, you know, the Robin Hood, rob from the rich, give to the poor. But I think what a lot of people don't realize, it all sounds very good, but a lot of people don't realize that is taking profits from the companies, that is taking profits from shareholders, dividend holders, pension fund holders, that is taking money from investment. And it means that companies are going to be more reluctant to invest and pour money into projects because, you know, it's not cheap digging an oil well somewhere and particularly in the North Sea or extracting gas and building thousands of miles of pipework and getting it to the homes and all these sorts of things. It sounds very easy. We just switch on our lights and think it's going to be there, and we get in the shower and the water's hot. But it requires billions of dollars and pounds of investment. So I think that's going to deter them from investing, and it's a bad move in my opinion. There is one way of solving this energy crisis, and I know what it is, but they won't do it. We are the people caught in the crossfire, just like the people in Ukraine. But there is one way of solving this crisis, and that's to relieve the sanctions, to say, look, yes, we'll have financial sanctions. Yes, we want you out of Ukraine, Mr. Putin, but we will exclude natural gas and oil and essential things like wheat and fertilizer that is feeding the world. Because now we're seeing food riots in parts of the world. We're seeing poverty in the Western world at you know, what should be the most prosperous time in history. So we're the ordinary people caught in the crossfire between, you know, Biden and Putin and the leaders. So if they just did that, I think that would immediately bring down these inflated prices of oil and gas, because it's about supply and demand. The supply would be there, and the prices would come down, and then the governments wouldn't need to keep taxing companies and borrowing money to bail people out who just really haven't got any savings, can't afford things. So that's my suggestion. That's my little side rant there. But just like oil and gas, property is also a matter of supply and demand. And at the moment, there is still demand for properties because there's a shortage of houses in the UK. They need to build 200,000 to 300,000 houses a year. Having said that, I've been hearing this figure for decades. You have to build 200,000 houses a year. I mean, they do build around about 100 to 200,000 new homes every year, but it just never seems to be enough. That could be because people are living longer, obviously, more divorces, separations, people wanted separate units, and of course several million more people coming into the country, migrating to the country, which has created that extra demand as well. So there is the demand, but the demand is there. We know they're needed. Whether people can afford to buy them or not is another matter. And I've seen recessions where, yes, there's still need 200,000 houses a year, but nobody's buying them because A, they haven't got the money, or B, the lenders won't lend, or there's just that market confidence which is gone. There's no market confidence. People don't feel confident to go out and buy a property. Now, if the economic conditions are not right, then obviously people will not have the money to go out and buy properties. And we're seeing a lot of worrying signs. We're seeing the economy is slowing down in the US and the UK. In the US, I think it dipped by over 1% in the first quarter of this year, and we dipped by just under 1% in the UK in the last month, in April. So if they have 2 consecutive quarters of that, then that's officially called a recession, but it hasn't got to that yet. But you can see signs of the economy slowing down. In fact, the European Central Bank warned of a housing market correction or a bubble, and how that could perhaps lead to bank defaults, and this is because of faltering economies, Ukraine war, etc., and could put banks at risk, and poor income families will suffer in those cases. Mortgage rates go up, that affects people. I've lived in an age where I saw a lot of repossessions. There were repossessions all over the place. People I know got repossessed. Several people I know that were doing very well one year, and next thing they were repossessed. So I've seen that, and that was when interest rates went up. They couldn't afford their mortgages. There was a stage in the 90s where there was this raft of people giving back the keys to the lender, putting it through the bank's door letterbox and saying, here's the keys, take it, I don't need it anymore. There was this thing called negative equity, where people had bought a property, say for £100,000, borrowed £95,000 or £100,000 even, or £110,000, and thinking that the price would keep going up. And then when the price went down, the mortgage was, say, £100,000 and the house was worth £80,000. So they called that negative equity. So the house was £20,000 less than the loan. And a lot of people panicked then. They said, oh, I'm handing back the keys. It's negative equity, negative equity. What does it matter? It's your home. And in those days, that was their home. It didn't matter whether, the loan was higher than the value of the home, because they always come back. And as long as you're living somewhere and you can pay the mortgage, what does it matter? You don't need to panic. Your home is your home. It's not really, strictly speaking, an investment. So if it goes up or down, it doesn't really matter in that case, unless of course you need to pull money out of it. But a lot of people were handing back keys. I remember this term negative equity. And then we've forgotten all about that, because prices have shot up since the last financial crash in 2008, as has the stock markets. So that's another worrying sign. This bull run of, 12, 14 years of bull run, continuous going up and up. And that never lasts. That just doesn't last. I've never seen it last in my lifetime. And it could go on a little bit longer, but I don't see it. There's always a correction. There's always that. It goes up over the longer term, but it's not in a straight line. It goes up, down, but then it gradually goes up. You've seen those lines, right? So that is another kind of worrying sign there. And also in America, the US Federal Reserve are definitely tightening things. So they're restricting the flow of money, putting up interest rates. That will definitely cause a recession, in my opinion. And the old saying, if America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. And we've even seen China's economy slow down as well. So worldwide, there are signs that there's a bubble there. The housing market in London, Sydney, Perth, Auckland, Vancouver, Toronto, you name it, they're all overblown. The bubble's there. Can we not see that? It can't last. The affordability index for people to buy houses just doesn't add up anymore. In London, the average income, you'd need about 15 times the average income to buy a home. So, when I was buying a home, the banks and building societies would lend you 2.5 times your income. So you needed a 10% deposit, and then the mortgage would be 2.5 times your income. So if you earned, just keep the sums simple here, £10,000 a year, the maximum loan you could get is £25,000. So if you've got a 10% deposit, you could only buy a property, say, of £30,000. Now, people could do that. People could afford it. People could, on an ordinary income and an ordinary job, could be a manual job, it could be any type of job. Most people could, at some stage, buy a property with a little bit of savings, and they might have to move out of town a bit, or whatever, or buy a small flat to start with, as I did. But you could do it. Now, they just can't, because in London, if an average flat is, say, £500,000, £500,000 for a flat, one bed flat in some areas, maybe a two bed, maybe an ex-council two bed, and maybe you go out a bit, it's maybe 400. But then, you know, with average incomes of around £30,000, clearly there's not enough there, is there? Now you can get 3 times income. All right, 3 times 30 is what? £90,000. And you've got to buy a place, say, for £500,000. You know, you need a deposit of £410,000. Even if you could borrow 4 times your income, that's £120,000. You're still way short, aren't you? You know, all right. So even if you could buy a cheaper flat, you move out a bit, you buy a cheaper flat for, say, you know, £300,000, and you can only borrow £120,000. You've still got to find a lot of deposit there, right? So it doesn't add up. It's the affordability. It's just gone. The index has gone off the scales. And so unless you've got money for the bank of mum and dad, unless mum and dad can remortgage their house with one of these lifetime mortgages, or grandparents can get a refinance with a lifetime mortgage, and then give that to their children and grandchildren, and they'll say, well, this is your inheritance, son, daughter, here it is, you know, and it will reduce the value of my estate as well when I die. Here it is now, rather than waiting for to when I die. It's a good idea, actually, but unless you've got that, unless you've got parents with equity in their homes, or wealthy parents or grandparents, you are stuck. And that's why the level of rental properties has gone up. In the last 10 years, it's risen. The amount of rental properties has now risen to 10.5 million, or 35, just about a third now, 35% of UK total dwellings. Total dwellings is around 30 million, 29.5 million dwellings in the UK. So it shows you that people are now being forced to rent for longer, into much older age. I bought my first flat when I was, I think, only about 20, and lots of people I know bought their place in their early 20s. Now people are living, you know, renting into their 30s and 40s, and sometimes living at home with their parents into their 30s and 40s. So it's not a great situation to see, particularly in a place where, you know, people thought their home was their castle, and we want to be a home owning country. But that's not unusual in the world. We're not the highest level of renters in the world, believe it or not. But that just shows you, it's one aspect that, you know, more and more people are turning to rent. And then we've seen this explosion of buy-to-let landlords in the last 20 years, you know, perhaps over 2 million of those renting properties to the private sector. A lot of them are hated. You know, people don't like buy-to-let landlords. They're greedy. We're profiteering on people. But actually, we're providing a service, you know, that the government cannot provide. The government stopped building council houses in the 1970s. So there's not enough properties out there, particularly for the lower paid. So they're turning to private landlords. So, you know, don't bite the hand that feeds you, as they say, and that's what the government are probably doing. But nevertheless, I mean, I got a call, excuse me, it's usual thing, Friday night, you get a call from a tenant, and that happened last night. Never on a Wednesday, Thursday, when you can book somebody to go in. The lights don't work upstairs. You know, have you tried the switch, blah, blah. This is at 8 o'clock on a Friday night. Now, that's what it's like to be a landlord. I'm having to try and run around getting electricians out today on a weekend. And something tells me, you know, why does this all happen on a Friday night? It's not the lights gone up, it's all the sockets. Something must have gone wrong during the week, but they choose to tell you on a Friday night, or there's a leak, and they tell you, oh, it's been leaking for a few days. I didn't get around to calling you. What? It's been leaking. Now you tell me on a Friday night when I can't get a plumber. So this is what goes on. It's not easy being a buy-to-let landlord. But if you do it right, look after people, they'll look after you. And it's a good long-term investment still. I believe it's still a good long-term investment. That's why I'm here talking about property. But just watch the prices, watch the market. I get questions like, should I buy a property, my home? Well, yeah, if you want to buy your home, why not? You could wait a while and see if you can get it cheaper. But if you found the property that you like right now, and you can get your mortgage now, then do it. And rates are still low, although interest rates have gone up, they're still relatively low historically. So I wouldn't worry too much if it's your own home. If you're buying for an investment, you might want to think more carefully. Certainly if you're buying to buy and flip, then definitely I would think more carefully about that, because that could be highly risky in this market. But I was looking at some figures on rentals. In the UK, the proportion in 2010 of people renting to buying was 34%, and it's now gone up to 35.7%. So it's not a lot in terms of proportion. I thought it was a bit higher than that. I thought it was roughly half, and it's not. But countries like Switzerland, the proportion is higher, 43%. Hong Kong, 50% of people own their own homes. But the rental rate estimate in Switzerland is 57%. Hong Kong, the home ownership rate, 49%, 50% in Germany, Austria, Turkey, 57%. South Korea, I'm putting this on my blog, by the way, you can see the whole table on Money Tips Daily. But you've got countries like Japan, 61% of people own their own property. Even in France, 64%. And I thought Germany was a higher rental rate. It's roughly 50-50 in Germany, 50-50 in Hong Kong. Switzerland, it says 42% home ownership rate, 57% rental rate. But it goes right down here. Let's have a look here. New Zealand, 64%. So yeah, it's about that. Ireland, 70% of people own their own homes in Ireland, much higher than the UK. Italy, 75%. Then you've got Scandinavian countries like Norway, 80% people own their own homes. Poland, 85%. I was looking here for Sweden and Denmark. United States, 65%. Then United States is a big country. You can still buy properties in the United States way out in the West somewhere, very, very cheaply. Obviously, hotspots like California is just unaffordable for people right now. Denmark, 59%, 60% of people own their own homes. But which country do you think on this list here is the highest for home ownership? From Singapore, 90%, Croatia, 91%, Russia, 89% of people own their own homes. That surprised me, because I thought, Russia, communist country, they will all be renting. So which country then is the highest for home ownership, has the highest home ownership rate in the world? Which country? Which country do you think? Put it in the comments. I think the answer will surprise you. But it's actually, do you want to tell you? It's in the top three are Hungary, 91%. Drum roll, Slovakia, 92%. 92% who own their own homes. I nearly bought in Slovakia once, very, very cheap. And the highest is, it is Romania. Romania has a 96%, 96.1% home ownership rate. Only 3.9% people actually rent there. So that's quite remarkable, isn't it? I didn't realize that Romania would have the highest home ownership rate in the world. So there you go. So, but getting back to the more serious point, it has become almost unaffordable to buy in the UK. So that means there's going to be more need for people to rent for a little bit longer, until maybe we have a correction and then prices come down a bit. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But in the meantime, I still think it's a good idea, buy to let. Watch the prices. Don't just go out and buy anything, and do get some training. In fact, there's some training, live training online next Wednesday. I can put a link up to that, 1st of June, 7 p.m. It will be property investing secrets. It's aimed at investors to show them how to, really get to grips with how to invest in buy-to-let, how to raise finance, how to start building your portfolio, and how to creatively raise finance when perhaps you can't do it in the normal way with banks. So they'll be looking at that. Top experts will be talking for 2 hours of actual training. It's not just going to be a sales pitch. So do check that out. I'll put a link up there. And of course, check out my property talks every week, where I'll be giving you updates on what is going on in the world of property. I also wanted to talk to you about letting properties, and the fact that most people in the UK will use a letting agent to arrange the tenant, organize the tenancy, and do the referencing. Some will ask them to manage the property, so it's an arm's length job, and say, right, you manage that property, you just get on with it. And I don't want to see the tenant. So that people will use letting agents. But what I've found here is that there are agents that are putting people at risk. There are letting agents that are putting people at risk. And what I mean by that is that the letting agents are, by not doing their job properly, are putting the landlord, that's people like you and me, if you are a landlord, at risk. Because if they don't do their job, if they don't get the correct paperwork, then the landlord is the one at risk. In fact, many agents get the landlords almost assign a disclaimer saying you're at risk. So if they don't do the gas check every year on time, and it's not done, and then there's a problem in the house, a leak, a fire, carbon monoxide poisoning, somebody dies, who is going to go to prison? It's the landlord. So even though you say, well, the letting agent was supposed to do that, I don't think the judge is going to really wear that. Then they're just not going to believe it. So just be careful there. And most agents will do a good job, of course, but most of them, a lot of them are not trained properly. They don't have the correct training. They're not doing their CPD, continuous professional development, and they're not keeping up to date with the raft of legislation and changes that are happening every year almost. We just had a load of new stuff coming recently. Then there's the local authorities bringing in their own local rules. So how can a small one-man band agent keep up with all this? They can't. They haven't got the resources. They haven't got the software systems to make sure that they get everything right and do everything in the right order. They just haven't. They're doing things manually by paper. Did you know how many pieces of legislation currently regulate and overlap the world of property and letting and tenants and landlords? Do you know how many pieces of legislation in the UK? Have a guess. Just have a guess. Put it in the chat if you like. 10, 20, no. In fact, I'll put you out of your misery. It's 160 pieces of legislation, rules and regulations that can interfere with or govern property letting and landlords. So it's not just the Housing Act, it's not just the Tenants Act, it's environmental things, it's Immigration Act, it's the Borders Act, all sorts of things overlap into property. So be very careful about that. I'm not saying you have to go through 160 pieces of legislation, but you have to be kind of aware of this. And the professionals who are doing this every day should be aware of this. The landlord with one property will perhaps not know this, but I found a lot of landlords know a bit more than the agents, because some of the agents are lazy, they don't do the training. So just be careful there. Things like, it could be a simple thing like if you don't give the how to rent guide or the prescribed information to the tenant, first of all, you're not complying with the regulations, but secondly, if you had to repossess that property for any reason, like the tenant won't move out at the end of the term and you have to serve a notice, or they're not paying their rent, or they trash the place, and you have to get them out, then you go to court and the judge looks down his glasses and says, where's the tenancy agreement? You give that. And where is the how to rent guide? And you're saying, what? The agent didn't mention that. Maybe you're looking at the agent in the courtroom. So where's this how to rent guide? And then you might try and bluff your way through it. Oh, yeah, I'm sure we gave that. And have you ever got the evidence that you've given them that? And did you give them the prescribed information? Oh, yes, of course you did, yes. And then they look at the tenants and no, we didn't get the prescribed information. We didn't get the how to rent guide. And if you can't demonstrate that you've given them those documents and you haven't even given them the documents, then the judge will say something like, well, I think you better get this sorted out, get your paperwork in order, and then come back again when you've got all that there. Right, dismissed, out. You're out the door, you're back in the system, you might have to wait another 2 or 3 months to get back into court to evict that tenant. And some of these tenants know this. Some of them are smarter than you think. So they read all the stuff. And a lot of landlords and letting agents don't, unfortunately. So just be very careful of that. And so, but that's something that can happen. That's one thing that can happen. But a lot worse than that is if there's an injury, there's a death in your property, you could go to prison. It's ultimately you could end up in jail for manslaughter if you don't do these things right and you don't get it right. So what I'm saying is a lot of landlords are relying on letting agents to guide them through this process. Perhaps it's their first buy to let. Perhaps they've only got one and they just don't know how to do it. I mean, I know a lot of people like that. I know a lot of elderly people that have one property they rent for their pension. They rely on the managing agent. They don't get it right, they're in trouble. They could get fines of up to £25,000, for instance. Simple things like, we know that everyone needs a smoke detector in a property, but what type of smoke detector? Do you test it on the day they move in? Do you make sure it's working on the day? No, well, you should do it. It should be on a checklist. Do you make sure that you take down the smoke detector and make sure that it hasn't expired? It's not just about the battery. The smoke detector has a shelf life and could be faulty and give out gases if it's not changed every time it needs changing. So just be very careful of all these sorts of things. And what I'm saying is a lot of agents just simply don't know this. They just don't know. I was shocked to find that, when I was asking agents, do you know, what about this prescribed information? And they said, oh, I didn't know about that. Well, what prescribed information? Now, this was a couple of years ago when it was coming in, but many of them might have got to grips with it. But some of them, one letting agent I knew in the town, he'd been doing it for 25 years. He was burned out, had enough of it, just couldn't take it anymore. He didn't want to work. He was barely worked on a Saturday morning, closed at 5 o'clock, no after hours call system to deal with problems. So the tenant would ring me even if he was managing the property. Didn't want to take on any more. In fact, he said, I can't take on any more. He didn't want to expand his business anymore. So how would he keep up to date with the training and everything? He just couldn't. So he's retired now, actually, but and that business is contracting. They've got rid of staff. So you can see how they're not keeping up to date with things. Now, agents that are part of a bigger organization, maybe a nationwide chain, they would have the training. And agents that could be small agents but are part of a franchise, they have really good training because a franchise would make sure that they're compliant, they're competent, they're doing all the anti-money laundering training, they're doing the GDPR training, they're doing this health and safety and doing things right. And they have the systems in place, the software systems to make sure that the tenancy agreement's correct, the prescribed information is there, printed out, the how to rent guide is there, and that you can demonstrate that you've supplied that to the tenant. Maybe it's in an email, maybe it's a signed form, whatever. And the tenancy agreements, they're not going to get lost because they're unsignable. All these sorts of things now are the modern way of doing things that keep you compliant. And if you ever have to demonstrate to an inspector of some sort or the police, yes, I've given that. That's all done. That was done. This is the software system. Or if you ever had someone from the local authority come along to you, a trading standards officer, then did you do this, this, and this? Yes, that's on my system. Have you done the right immigration checks? Have you done? It's all there for you. So with a franchise, you've got that behind you. It's a bit like a burger bar or a chicken bar opening up in the high street and run by an independent compared to a KFC and a McDonald's. The McDonald's obviously are going to have the training. They're going to have a system there that means that things work to a certain order. They don't forget things. It's there because it's part of the system. All the staff know the system. And that's the way it works in a franchise. And the fact that I've had such bad experience from estate agents and letting agents over the years has prompted me to do something that I thought I'd never do. And that's open my own estate agency business, which I'm actually doing next month. And of course, I'm part of a franchise, as you might have guessed. I'm part of the Open House nationwide franchise, because I realized I could never do it on my own. If I tried to do it on my own and build the systems and, reinvent the wheel, and, it just wouldn't happen. I'd be a year trying to get all that done. But with Open House, they have all the software systems. They have the right move, the Zoopla access and Boomin as well, so I can advertise everything on there. They have the training. I've gone through a week's intensive course with my team. So it's great. I'm really pumped up now. I really feel I'm ready for this. And it was amazing on the train to realize how much most agents were forgetting or just not doing. Because I was saying, well, my agent doesn't do that. My agent doesn't do that. Did you know they're supposed to do this? No, I didn't know that. So I'm really looking forward to getting going in June. There's still some things I have to do, because I have to join the property ombudsman scheme, the property redress scheme. I have to go through some mandatory training on anti-money laundering and GDPR before I can start trading. I have to make sure I'm registered with deposit protection, have a client money account. Believe it or not, one of the people on the course was actually keeping client deposit money in her own bank. She was a landlord. She was keeping that in her own account. But you just can't do that. You can get fined for doing that. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'll be announcing that in the coming weeks of how that will be going and keeping you up to date with that. I'll be covering a kind of an area of northwest London, Hertfordshire, sort of Watford, Radlett, Boreham Wood, parts of Kings Langley as well, and Bushey as well. So it's quite a big area, and that'd be my patch, as it were, because with the franchise you have a patch. I mean, I can't work all over the country anyway, but I have got access to a nationwide network of agents as well, and that taps me into their customer base as well. And also we will be dealing with auctions through an auctioneer company that will enable a vendor to sell a property at auction without paying any fees. So that's all exciting news I'll be telling you about. So in the meantime, have a great weekend. It's a beautiful sunny day. I'm off for the weekend now, but have a great weekend. And please, if you're looking at getting into property, don't just jump in and do it and buy the first thing you see. Get some training, and I'm offering training every week as well, but there's some free live training Wednesday, the 1st of June, 7 p.m. I'll put a link up shortly. Do join that training, and it's 2 hours of packed training by experts to show you the right way of doing things so that you don't make the errors that many first-time landlords make. And it's still a good business, despite all the problems, despite all of the issues that the government are throwing at us. I believe it's still a good business. Property, don't forget, is something that everyone will need. It's been there for thousands of years, and you can use leverage, other people's money, to buy it, which you will not find very easy investing in things like crypto, right? So still think about property. It's still a good investment, but be careful in this market right now, because I think we're going to see a correction. But long term, I'm still in property. So do join that training on Wednesday. Put the link up, and I'll see you next Saturday as well. Thanks very much for listening. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.